So good morning or good night, depending on where you are in the world, and welcome to another interview of the Shield Dude on a Couch. I'm your host, Hector, and today I'm joined by Matt Smith. He's the lead guitar player and singer for the band Theocracy, which is a band that's been around almost now 20 years, and they're gonna put out a new album called Mosaic on October the 13th, and we're here to talk all about it. So, Matt, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thank you, Hector. It's an honor to be here. And hello, everybody. Great to be here.
Yeah, so I listened to the new album, and obviously you're very well known in the power metal, Christian, and also the progressive metal side of things. And obviously you cover a lot of like material to your faith in your music, but it's done in a way that I think it's catchy and well, and not like, sometimes there's Christian bands that can be super preachy, but I think you do it in a way that's very interesting, especially on this album. I thought this album had some different elements of music. I heard a little bit of thrash metal. I heard prog. I heard power metal, all mixed into one. So Matt, I know this is an album that the last album that you put out was a few years ago. So how does it feel to be back after a few years?
Well, thank you for the kind words. It feels great. It's been longer than we expected. We took a little plan to take a little break after the last record, Ghost Ship, because I was just so burned out. I needed a break between having put those albums out nonstop and the tours and then side jobs and studio work and everything else. I kind of hit a wall, so I needed some time. And then COVID happened, and then we had a lineup change, and then we changed record labels. So the time sort of compounded, a little more extremely than we had planned on. But so yeah, after all that, it feels wonderful, man. The actual recording was pretty easy, as these things go. Well, it's never easy, but compared to some of the other stuff, everything went pretty smoothly. So it's after all that time, we've been sort of aching for people to finally hear the album. So it's exciting that two songs are out, at least, and the full record is almost here.
Yeah, you have Mosaic, which is one of the singles, and the other one is Return to Dust. And Return to Dust is really interesting because I think that one mixes power metal with prog rock to a T. So why did you pick those two as the lead singles for this record?
Well, Mosaic was an easy choice. I mean, for me, that's one of my favorite Theocracy songs, period. And I think it sums up so much of what we do so well, in one song. It has the quiet intro and the fast gallop, the power metal structure, and then it gets kind of thrashy in the middle and the big choruses and all that. So I think that always seemed like sort of a no-brainer for a single and a video, and conceptually as well. And then Return to Dust was interesting because that was actually, I think that was the last song that I wrote for the record, and that was because I never write, I never sort of set out with a plan of what I need to write or what direction I want to go in or whatever. It's hard for me to see those things until after it's done. So I just I do what comes naturally. That song came last because that one sort of was written to a purpose in a way, because once I listened to everything I had, I realized that I didn't have sort of that kind of classic mid-tempo kind of anthem song. And so for the album to flow well, I felt like maybe we needed one of those. And so that's when that song came along. And then we just kept getting feedback from people who heard it. People kept saying, man, that song has to be the first single and the first thing people hear. It's so catchy or whatever. So and Atomic Fire, our label, wanted to do 2 videos, and so we thought that based on what people were saying, that would be a good second choice, and so that's what ended up coming out first.
Yeah. And I see that Atomic Fire as a record label is really branching out and signing a lot of like bands from different styles, because I also talked to Jack Panzer, and they're also signed to that label. And I see that they really promote the bands. How was the experience of getting to be signed by Atomic Fire?
It's been great. They've been great so far. We so long story short, we were with a label called Ulterium Records from Sweden for our last 3 albums, and still great friends with Emil, the head of that label. And he had sort of, I think he kind of hit a point similar to as you know, to what I did in the past few years of he kind of got overwhelmed and needed to step back and take a break. So he didn't want to do any more new big releases with Ulterium for this foreseeable future. So he said, you know, if you guys want to self-release, if you want me to help you, you know, shop for different labels and whatever. And so we kind of weighed our options, and we had some good offers, and Atomic Fire was one that kept coming up, and we liked, you know, Marcus and some of their guys came from Nuclear Blast, so they had that pedigree, but they were also still fairly small in terms of the roster, you know, whereas some of these labels, you know, no disrespect, but they'll sign anything with a pulse, you know, so they're putting out just album after album every week, and you can't even really keep up with it. So it feels like these bands kind of get lost in the shuffle, and so we didn't want that either. So this was sort of a nice middle ground, in that they have, you know, the pedigree and the muscle, but they also are small enough to kind of pay attention to us. And even our first meeting with them, you know, one of the guys said, I bought 2 copies of Mirror of Souls, you know, our second album when it came out. He said, I bought the Japanese version because I wanted the bonus track, you know. So they were already, you know, fans and loved the music going in and loved the album. So all those things together, it felt like the right decision. And so far they've been great.
So it's like the Jerry Maguire effect. Remember that movie?
Right.
It's more personal attention. So yeah, it's great that you got that, and you have those years off. Do you think that having those years off like help you like be more energized to come back to Theocracy?
I do. I definitely, you know, I'd always said starting out that I wanted to do 5 albums. We've always been so tried to keep such a high standard for quality in terms of never putting out, you know, inferior tracks and placeholders and things like that. So, you know, there's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that goes into it. So I always felt like if I could do 5 albums of that quality, that would be a career that I'm very thankful for. So, you know, I don't know if, I'm not saying that this is the last album or anything like that. I'm just saying that, you know, I didn't know that there would be a 5th, you know, a few years ago. So having some time off and coming back, it definitely feels refreshing, and even some of the little changes. You know, we got a new guitar player named Taylor Washington, who is awesome and has a great voice. And so, you know, harmonizing with him live and things like that, there's just kind of a new excitement to everything with the new label as well. So yeah, it's a great time in Theocracy world.
No, awesome. I'm going to show the artwork for the upcoming record for people who haven't seen it. So here we have Mosaic. And what can you tell me a little bit about this our album artwork? Obviously, it sounds like something that you would see on a church or on like a museum, the Mosaic, and it's really eye-catching. So tell me a little bit about the inspiration for this.
Yeah, it definitely has that sort of stained glass kind of classic look to it, and I think it's just gorgeous. And so the story was, the artist is named Stephen Howard, and he was a fan of ours. Excuse me. And he reached out a few years ago now with like a poster that he had done, sort of a fan poster of the band, you know, and it was just beautifully done, and it also had sort of a stained glass look to it, and he was selling those and things like that. And he said, when he reached out to us, he said, you know, if you go, I would love to take a crack at doing album artwork for you guys if you need someone in the future. And so we kept him in mind, and then we had, when I had the idea for Mosaic, the song, and basically, you know, the song sort of deals with how we can't see the big picture of our lives. We can only see the the individual scenes, and it takes being able to back off and have the perspective to see sort of, what exactly is going on in the big picture of our lives and how those plans work together. And so I was thinking about that concept with the song, and I relayed that to him, and he worked on it for a little bit and sent back basically pretty close to what you see with the final version, with the with all those little vignettes sort of combining to create the big mosaic. And we changed a couple things and made some color adjustments and made the logo a little bigger, but that was about it. I mean, he nailed it right away, and I think it's just gorgeous artwork.
Yeah, it's pretty cool artwork, and it goes with the themes on the record. So I listened to the record, so there's a few tracks that to me stand out that I would like to ask you more about those songs.
Mhm.
Especially is the two ending songs, Liar, Fool, or Messiah, and Red Sea, which is the 19+ minute album closer. So yeah, the Red Sea, I read that that's a song that you had for a long time. So it's actually a song that you wrote, like, if I'm not mistaken, like 20 years ago. So what made you revisit that song?
Yeah, that one was mostly written way back when I was 19. So I that was sort of the last, there were several older pieces that kind of predated the first Theocracy record that have come out over the years, on various records as we revisit them and sort of kind of beat them into shape. And that was the last old one that I was hanging on to, sort of the last thing in the vaults, if you will. And it was because it was, it was written when I was so young that a lot of it was very kind of juvenile, and I didn't know if it could be kind of good enough to come out on a actual Theocracy record with where we are now. So at one point during COVID, I'd kind of been putting it off for years, and so I finally said, all right, I've got a little time now, so I'm going to sit down with this song and take the good parts that are there and rewrite the parts that aren't so good, and throw some parts away and add some new parts and this and that, and see if I can turn it into something that's good enough to come out on a Theocracy record. So I did that, and I sent it to the guys, and to my surprise, everyone just loved it, and they said, this is great, we got to put it out. So that ended up, once that happened, that was kind of that was a nice sort of burden off me too mentally, because then we kind of have a record, with the songs that I've been writing, plus the 19-minute epic or whatever. It's like, all right, so there is going to be another Theocracy album now. So yeah, it was, a lot of, I would say most of the music and stuff was already there, so a lot of the stuff from the original demo is, as it is on the final version. It was just different parts were tweaked and rewritten and things like that.
The working on that song, obviously you're very different from 19 to now. Did you rework the lyrics as well?
I did, only in certain sections though. I mean the sort of basic conceit of the song was already there, and the message and the way that the story is broken into two parts. And so it was just a matter of certain parts where I rewrote the music, kind of reshaping the lyrics so they would fit, or so they would be a little less cliched or whatever. So yeah, it was kind of the same as it was with the music. A lot was already there, and then certain parts that needed to be reworked were reworked lyrically as well.
Yeah, and I know that the song is about the ancient story of Moses and the Red Sea, but with a modern element. So can you talk a little bit about the background of that song?
Yeah, I was just, it's well, being a Christian band, all of our songs have some tie to that in one way or another. And I was just kind of thinking about the parallels is Red Sea, and how the Red Sea could be the blood of Christ, if you're talking about, a redemption story. And so that's kind of how the song splits up. The first half is sort of the story of the Israelites and the actual Red Sea, the crossing of the Red Sea, and Moses, etc., as you mentioned. And and then the second half is kind of, more personal, kind of modern take on basically just a conversion story and having the Red Sea, represent the blood of Christ.
Okay, yeah, interesting. And it's a 19 album closer, and it goes through different areas, like some great soloing. There's prog metal there, there's power metal, and I think there's even a section where it gets a little bit thrashier at some point. So yeah, it's a great closing track. But the track before, I think, is the most thrash metal song on the record, with Liar, Fool, or Messiah. At least to me, the guitar there, it sounded like the more thrash metal. Like, what inspired you on that one?
Yeah, that one, a lot of people have mentioned that song as well so far as kind of being a standout. So that's cool. I find that interesting and good. I think when I wrote that one, I was listening to a lot of Arch Matheos, which is, I don't know if you're familiar with the prog metal band Fate's Warning, but
Yes,
their
I am.
main guy Jim Matheos and their original singer John Arch, they reunited to put out some projects together, and so many of their epics have that kind of wacky guitar playing, and I've been listening to a lot of that, and I guess I was kind of just writing something along those lines, and then I had the chorus for that song was actually from another kind of little standalone idea that I had, and so as time went on, these ideas kind of like, oh, these work perfectly together, and so they just became the one song. I was kind of surprised, as usual with these things. I was sort of surprised at what the length of it ended up being. It ended up being longer than expected. I think that one's over 7 minutes, but
Yeah.
it's nice. I think it the chorus is so catchy, and the feel of a lot of it, like you said, is so thrashy, and then it gets kind of progressive in the middle, but I think it doesn't feel quite as long as it is. So I think that's a good thing.
No, yeah, and I think, yeah, for album closers, having those two tracks really close out the album really, really well. So right now you're gonna put out the album October 13th. What are the plans for the immediate future for Theocracy?
That's actually still being discussed. So the only thing that's concrete right now, on the day of the album release, we're playing a festival in Germany called the Loud and Proud Festival, which we actually played last year, and we're playing it 2 days. I think there's the main set, and then there's like an acoustic side stage gig, and then beyond that, it's sort of all in discussion, because we have offers from other festivals and different ideas and things like that. And between everyone's families and side gigs and jobs and all that stuff, it kind of takes a lot of meeting and a lot of sort of work and effort to sort of work out a schedule that makes the most sense. So at this point, we're kind of trying to decide what works best first. If we want to do like another full European tour like we've done in the past, if we want to do something in the US first. So that's all being discussed at the moment. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So would you say the new album Mosaic is a concept record, or it's more of like individual theme type of record?
No, it's not a concept album at all. And in fact, as as I alluded to earlier, I wasn't even sure that there was going to be a fifth record, and so all these songs were definitely written individually. The first one that I wrote sort of for the purpose of doing something new was the Sixth Grade Extinction, and then the other songs kind of came on from there. And then, but now, sort of getting a little distance from it, and being able to see it as a whole, and being away from it a little bit, I can definitely see certain themes that come up, more than once in the lyrics of the record, which I find interesting. But that's just how these things work. It's like you write what's on your heart and kind of where you are in life, and the same themes sometimes tend to pop up a few times, and you kind of, sometimes you can't see it at the time. You only see it in retrospect, when you get a little distance from it.
Yeah. So when you sit down to write songs, what is your writing process like? Do you work first on the music, and then the lyrics come to you, or do you do like a combination?
Yeah, I usually do the music first. I'm always cataloging ideas all the time on my phone or whatever. You know, if I come up with a good riff or a good melody, or a good title, I'm writing down. So usually when I sit down to work on something, I'll work on the music first. But the the thing that I learned a while back, from some other great songwriters that I look up to, though, is that the best way to write is to have a title and to have an idea of what you want to say, and then to construct the song to make that title pay off. So that's what I try to do when I sit down. I have to have a, I mean, I've done it all kinds of ways. I've done lyrics first. I've done sitting down and writing all the music and kind of not knowing what it is and then figuring that out later. But the way it comes easiest is when I sort of have at least a conceptual idea of knowing what the song's about and kind of where I want it to go, because then you can sort of shape the lyrics and the music to kind of work together. But then the last step is always kind of finalizing, the lyrics and filling in those blanks.
Okay. So I know that you musicians, like sometimes don't have enough time to listen to music, but sometimes they do. For you, like growing up, or like, do you have like uh, free albums that really shaped you as a musician?
Oh man, that is so difficult. I certainly do. The problem with me is it's hard to narrow it down. I mean, the 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 number one that comes to mind immediately is easy, and that's Operation Mindcrime by Queensryche. When I was
Yeah.
a kid, I mean, that just that completely turned my world upside down in terms of you know when my friend showed it to me, I was like, wow, I didn't know this kind of thing was possible, because so much of the music back then was girls and fast cars and sort of whatever, just about having fun and this and that, and this was like, whoa, this thing's telling a story, and it's so deep, and it's interesting, and the characters are good, and it's so well done. So that's the no-brainer. And then the second one for me would have to be something by Metallica, probably. I know it's a kind of a cliche, but my favorite Metallica
Okay.
album is Ride the Lightning, but it would probably be the Black Album in terms of influence, because just in terms of the production, and I was so in awe of the sounds, and wanting to figure out how they did that and how they made that sound so good, and that kind of chase is still exciting to me. It's like however many years later, I'm still kind of on that chase. And then for a third one, I would say it would probably be something power metal. I would say probably maybe Mandrake by Edguy, because um that's a German power metal band. Tobias
Yeah.
Sammet, who's an acquaintance of mine. We have the same webmaster and everything, so we've hung out and spoken many times. And I remember at the time that was, we were so excited to get that, and we got it early copies, and just hearing the big choirs and the way that they sort of arrange those vocals and stuff, that was a big influence on me early on, for sure. So I think those are three good ones.
I think those are three great picks, and I
Mm.
agree with the Black album. Maybe it's not my favorite Metallica record, but what they did on the sound of that record, they changed heavy metal forever. Uh, it's like a flawless sounding record.
Agreed.
So
Agreed.
so yeah, so yeah, the gearing up to the album, and for you, and being known as a Christian band in metal, how important is it for you uh, to put your beliefs into your music?
Oh, it's very important. I mean, that's why we do what we do. The important thing for me, though, I've mentioned before, is to do it in a way that's honest, and to do it in a way that never talks down to people. You know what I mean? And
Yeah, like yeah,
and
I
yeah,
exactly what you mean.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, and comes from a place of, because if you listen to our songs, like under that umbrella, they cover so many different topics from so many different sort of perspectives, and some are historical, and some are personal, and some are things that were going on in my life, or a friend of mine, the life of a friend of mine, or etc. So there always has to be some sort of some kind of thread that I can identify with in there. And I think having that human element, in addition to, and you know what I mean, it's not just doctrine, it's not just highbrow, it's
Yeah.
not repetitive, same thing like some Christian music can be. So I think that's why people latch on to what we do, because I think they can sense the honesty there, and the you know, the fact that there's always sort of a human element to it, no matter what, you know, we may be talking about in the song.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think I said it. Yeah, it doesn't sound like preachy, and it's done in a way that's, you know, it's interesting. I like the history part of it as well. So so before we go, Matt, anything that you'd like to say to the fans of Theocracy on what to expect from now in the upcoming months?
Just a huge thank you for your patience, and for, I know a lot of people have been, you know, waiting and waiting for this album, and have been we're getting frustrated at the lack of updates, you know, when we didn't quite know what was going on, you know, because of taking time with the lineup change, and the label change, and all this stuff. So I'm thankful to everyone for sticking with us, and I hope that, you know, we've done the absolute best that we could. We worked so hard on this album, as always. So I hope that you guys like it, and that it speaks to you, and you find something worthy of your time. And we certainly appreciate you hanging with us, and I appreciate you having me on to talk today. It's been awesome.
No, yeah, I've had a lot of fun talking with you, and I would recommend. I listened to the album, so I would recommend this album to anyone who likes progressive power metal with some thrash metal into it. And yeah, I think the last two, like this album, the last two songs are such a strong album closers. Which sometimes there's albums that don't have that, but yeah, and 19, you know, it's a gamble to close an album on a 19-minute track. So yeah, I think the gamble pays off, and it's a great closing track that, and also you don't get bored, because sometimes like a long song, people, it has to have some changes to keep you engaged, and it did for me. So great track to end the album. So Matt, hopefully, you know, I hope you get better now that
Thank you.
you're a little bit under the weather and ready for the show. So people, the new Theocracy album will be out on October the 13th. I'm gonna put the link for people so can pre-order that album. So until next time, people, this is Hector, the Shield Dude on a couch, and I'll see you all right here on the couch. Thank you
Thank you.
and good night.